Count of attempted murder. Patterson showed no emotion from the dock as the verdicts were read out. She's been behind bars for more than 600 days. Now she faces the possibility of life in prison. It's been almost 2 years since the deaths of Don and Gail Patterson and Heather Wilkinson, so this has been an incredibly long wait for these families. Now this trial that's attracted global attention finally has its verdict.
It was a trial that captured global attention. 3 people dead, 1 left fighting for life after consuming death cap mushrooms hidden in a beef Wellington dish. Erin Patterson claimed it was all a tragic accident. Today a jury found it was murder.
I'm devastated. I love them.
She insisted she never intended to poison her estranged husband's family, but after weighing up 8 weeks of evidence from more than 50 witnesses, the jury unanimously decided she deliberately murdered her 3 in-laws and tried to murder a 4th.
And I'd also like to acknowledge the investigators that have worked on this investigation since July 2023. Right through to today.
In July 2023, Patterson pretended to have cancer, a lie the prosecution says was her way of luring the 4 guests to her Leongatha home for lunch. She served individual beef Wellingtons laced with lethal death cap mushrooms on 4 identical plates. Her own portion was served on a different coloured plate because it didn't contain the toxic fungi. Don and Gail Patterson and Heather and Ian Wilkinson fell violently ill later that evening. Despite the desperate efforts of doctors, Don, Gail and Heather all died within a week. Ian spent almost 2 months in hospital clinging to life. He survived and became the prosecution's star witness. On the witness stand, he revealed Patterson had been reluctant to show them her pantry and refused Heather and Gail's offer of help to plate up the meal. He said Patterson told the group she had cancer and asked for advice on how to break the news to her 2 children. They then prayed for her and her treatment options. Patterson's murderous plot continued in the days after the poisonous meal, when she feigned illness to cover up what she'd done. CCTV taken from a service station the day after the lunch showed her enter and exit the bathroom in 9 seconds, despite claiming to be suffering gastro symptoms. She took herself to hospital but was reluctant to receive treatment, and tests showed no evidence she ever suffered death cap mushroom poisoning. The day after being discharged, she dumped her food dehydrator at the local tip. Then she lied to police, claiming she never owned one and had never foraged for mushrooms. Patterson told health authorities she bought the mushrooms from an Asian grocer in Melbourne, but she couldn't remember the name of the store and changed her story over the course of their conversations. All the evidence the prosecution needed was on her electronic devices. More than a year before the lunch, a computer in her home was used to visit the iNaturalist website, which listed the location of death cap mushrooms in Melbourne's southeast. Within days of 2 other posts appearing on the website, her phone records showed possible visits to 2 Gippsland towns where death cap mushrooms were growing. While police were searching her Leongatha home, her usual mobile phone went offline and has never been recovered. The phone she handed over to police, which the prosecution labelled her dummy phone, was factory reset 4 times after the lunch. The prosecution said Patterson pretended to be a loving daughter-in-law, but in reality she resented her in-laws after her relationship with her estranged husband soured. Patterson had vented her frustration to Facebook friends, describing her ex-Simon as a deadbeat father and his parents as a lost cause, after the pair argued over finances and child support payments. She also told them how excited she was to buy a food dehydrator, hide mushrooms in various recipes, and asked for tips on how to cook a beef Wellington. Patterson took the witness stand in her own defence, giving evidence for 8 days, telling the jury her version of the story. The 50-year-old said she lied to her in-laws about having cancer to cover up planned weight loss surgery. She insisted she also fell ill from the beef Wellington meal, just not to the same extent as her relatives, claiming she made herself throw up after binge eating cake left over from the lunch. She told the jury she panicked after her estranged husband accused her of poisoning his pet parents and realised she may have mixed up foraged mushrooms with some she'd purchased. Patterson said she dumped her food dehydrator because she was worried it contained the remnants of death cap mushrooms and she feared Child Protection would take her children away. She admitted she shouldn't have lied to homicide detectives and was adamant she never meant to poison anyone. But ultimately, the jury wasn't convinced her relatives' deaths were a terrible accident.
I think it's very important that we remember that we've had three people. Three people have died and we've had a person that nearly died and was seriously injured.
Patterson may have tried to make the lunch seem like a wholesome family occasion.
I ask that we acknowledge those people and not forget them.
But in the end, it was cold, calculated murder. Abby Dinham, 10 News.
Dozens of media outlets as well as members of the public gathered at the Supreme Court in Morwell for a week as anticipation built towards a verdict from the Patterson trial. Steph Baumgartel joins us from Morwell. Steph, what was the reaction in the courtroom?
Jen, you could hear a pin drop inside the courtroom while outside there was building anticipation as media waited to hear if Erin Patterson would be deemed a killer. There was a very large group of media outside the court when the jury returned that note that they had in fact reached a verdict. There were no members of the Patterson or Wilkinson family that attended. That's despite them attending every single day of a 9-week trial. Instead, today they opted to watch on a private web link just for family members from the privacy of their homes, while Erin Patterson learned her fate. She was labelled a liar, a disgruntled ex-wife and now a callous killer. Erin Patterson found guilty of murdering 3 of her former in-laws with a beef Wellington meal and attempting to kill a 4th.
I just had so much anxiety, emotion. I could feel the emotion in the room, so it was hard not to, almost not cry really when you think about it.
The 50-year-old mother sat in the dock flanked by 2 prison officers as the guilty verdicts were read out by the jury one by one.
It was a shock when the verdict was delivered, but it was going to be a shock either way.
I wasn't looking at Erin, I was looking at the jury. When the jury came out, none of them looked at Erin, so I thought, we've got guilty here.
Erin Patterson showed no emotion and had just 2 supporters in court. One of them, a woman she befriended on the internet, who cried as she left the hearing.
I didn't have any expectations. It's the justice system and it has to be what it is.
Ali, she said to you, see you soon. Were you hoping to see her?
I will see her.
As the eyes of the world were cast to the town of Morwell throughout the 10-week trial, Crown Prosecutor Dr Nanette Rogers and Defence Barrister Colin Mandy were living it.
I'd like to say about the verdict.
The verdict, a major win for the Crown Prosecutor, who proved the case beyond reasonable doubt, but wasn't in court to see the verdict in person. The trial now over, the legacy of Morwell and the lethal Leongatha lunch will tragically linger, and 2 families will never be the same.
I hope that they're feeling relieved now that they can get some sort of, move on in life. They'll never get their family back.
Steph Baumgartel, 10 News.
And Samantha Butler joins us live from Morwell. Sam, where to from here for the mushroom cook killer?
Well, Jen, Erin Patterson is back behind bars tonight at the Dame Phyllis Frost Centre. That is the maximum security women's prison where she has already spent 613 days behind bars. Ms Patterson never applied for bail after her arrest in November 2023, just a couple of months after that fatal lunch. And that means that having been found guilty of 3 counts of murder and 1 of attempted murder, she is now facing life behind bars. As for her sentence date, well, that is on a date that is yet to be determined. But before that, she will have to face a pre-sentence hearing. That is a chance for the judge to hear victim impact statements from the families of Don and Gail Patterson and Heather and Ian Wilkinson, and also for the prosecution and defence to put forward submissions on her sentence length. It is also open to Ms Patterson's defence team to launch an appeal of her sentence and conviction, and they will have 28 days from her sentence date in order to lodge that appeal. But Jen, for now, tonight, Erin Patterson is spending her first night behind bars as a convicted killer.
OK, thank you, Sam. And now to media lawyer Justin Quill. Justin, thanks for joining us. What was the evidence that brought Erin undone?
Well, look, Jen, we don't really know the answer to that because, of course, we don't have any insights into the jury's deliberations. In my discussions with all the people who have been stopping me literally in the streets asking about this case, everyone seems to have a different view about what was the clincher bit of evidence. Was it the cancer lie? Was it the fact that she didn't get particularly sick? Was it the different coloured plate? Who knows what it was in that jury room that got this guilty verdict over the line? It's something we'll all wonder about and we'll never know.
Justin, were there any unusual aspects in this case?
Where do we start? There were plenty of them. I mean, right off the top, the fact that Erin Patterson didn't argue it wasn't me, it wasn't the mushroom pie. She said, yes, I cooked the mushroom pie that killed these people. So that wasn't even an issue. The fact that one of the intended victims survived and actually came to court and gave evidence. If you wrote a script, for a movie or for a documentary, people would say it's too unrealistic. And then, of course, probably the biggest thing that was unusual about this case is that Erin Patterson, as the defendant, gave evidence. That's very rare. So, look, all of that, together with the fact that it went on for so long, 7 days of deliberations, no questions from the jury, that's unusual. I could go on. There was a lot of unusual aspects to this case.
So, Justin, what might happen now?
Well, as we just heard a moment ago, the next step really is some submissions and a hearing before Justice Beale on sentencing. So that's called a plea hearing. Jury have now gone home. They've finished their role, and it's all up to Justice Beale. He'll hear argument and submissions. That could be happening in a few weeks' time, and then His Honour will no doubt reserve his decision and deliver it perhaps a few weeks later. So it could be a couple of months, more, give or take, before we have a sentence. One thing is for certain, though, the fact that she gave evidence and effectively doubled down, tripled down on her lies will mean this will be a very, very severe sentence, and she'll be spending a long time in jail.
OK, thank you for your time, Justin.